Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Are you frustrated and stressed out with your professional and personal life? The Charge Podcast will help you get recharged. Yes, we are already in August of 2020. Time for schools to be opening up and students heading back to the classroom. Now this year, that may be not the case depending on where you're listening to this podcast. We decided this month we will talk about topics on education to share with you some experts on how they're handling educating students for today, tomorrow, and beyond. The goal of the Charge Podcast is for you to realize you can only control what you can control. Remember, our influence in life comes from the things we can control. You made a great choice in listening to this podcast. I think this quote sums it up best by Stephen R. Covey. I'm not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions. Remember, the podcast is named Charged after my mantra, create habits around real goals every day. Let's get recharged in this podcast to influence a positive culture in our life each day. Are you ready? Chargers, I know you're always looking for opportunities to learn, grow, and develop. That's why you listen to the Charge Podcast. Well, most leaders struggle with communicating the goals of your business to get results. At the Leadership Navigator Academy, we've created a learning and development program that helps leaders hold themselves and their team accountable. When your leaders change behaviors, you see results in increased performance and a more engaged team, which increases profits. If you would like to learn more about the Leadership Navigator Academy, go to thechargepodcast.com and click on the L&A link to get all the information.
Welcome, Chargers. We're glad to have you back again this week for another great guest. I love searching each and every week and finding guests with different perspectives because that's how you learn. And I think we did it again this week, and you're going to enjoy this topic because Grant Aldrich founded OnlineDegree.com with a purpose-driven mission: make college more accessible and affordable for everyone. After graduating college with an overwhelming amount of debt, he was determined to change how students embark on their college education. Grant has spent his entire career working in startups with nearly 15 years of experience and 2 prior exits to a public traded company. He has been a board member and a donor to a number of nonprofits, an advisor to many public traded companies, and a guest speaker at seminars and graduate school courses. He graduated with honors from the University of California Irvine in economics. Well, sorry, Grant, we're not going to get into too much economics here. I like the simple math side, so we're going to bypass that one. But I love that you got a degree in economics. So, Grant, it's great to have you on the Charge Podcast.
Hey, Gary, thank you for having me.
Well, I am so excited to talk about this online degree and what you're doing there, and really talking about students, some of the changes and things that is really changing the world. We've seen that over the last several months with really the change of our world and our society that has happened. But before we go there, I always like to ask every guest my mantra. It's called create habits around real goals every day. That's why it's the Charge Podcast. So for yourself, what habit or habits would you say has led to success in your life?
Yeah, I think probably the greatest thing I've done to keep me goal-oriented and successful is above my desk on my wall, I have a letter that I wrote to myself before I began this startup. And, you know, for fellow entrepreneurs, or maybe even someone who hasn't done an entrepreneurial venture, being an entrepreneur is a scary thing and an emotional roller coaster. There are ups, there are downs, mostly downs, and it's a long, hard road. And so I wrote that letter to myself for 2 reasons. One is to provide me solace through what was going to be a very tough journey. I've done this many times before, and I knew how hard it was going to be. And I wanted to write myself at a time when I was the most optimistic and most excited, and to provide me that comfort during those down times. And the second thing that I think is more germane to your question is that I look up at that every day, because it's really, I mention and talk a lot about my children. And every day when I'm looking at my tasks, I ask myself, is what I'm doing valuable enough to be away from my children right now? And that has really helped me put into perspective the best use of my time. Because as we know, as entrepreneurs, there is a black hole of commitment everywhere you look, and you have to stay focused. And so that, I think, is the best advice I could give.
Well, I congratulate you on writing that letter, because I've heard before, and I've done a workshop, and there's a great book out, Forward Living, by Michael Harkavy and Michael Hyatt. And they talk about that forward living. And one of the things they talk about is writing your obituary. And there's people saying that sounds really tough, but what you're doing is you're writing what you want to happen. And that forward living, what you did by that letter to me, is you kind of told yourself through this journey what you want to happen through that journey. And it really helps refocus you. And by having it somewhere you see it, it becomes that constant reminder. So for our other folks, maybe you don't have a business, but what do you want your life to be? That could be a message right there. And we could go down a whole rabbit hole there to get there, to be able to talk about that. But I think what we're going to talk about fits that, because what you're talking about, Grant, with your area of expertise, you've created this onlinedegree.com. And what it is really, how can we do that learning? And in life today, let's be honest, we have to be constant learners. And how can we make those changes? So I'm curious, what was really, I know you had the massive debt, but what really made you decide, okay, I'm going to go down this path of this onlinedegree.com, because I think this is a path that for others would really be beneficial to them?
Well, it actually starts in a near-death experience after I had exited my last two companies. And just to quickly summarize, imagine being on cloud 9 in 2015. It was really the best year of my life. I had exited my startup that I'd worked for about 8 years on. I got married, and my wife was pregnant with our first son. And it all came crashing down in that moment. I was out in the water in Northern California during a surf advisory. Shouldn't have been out there. I'm a fool. This is all given. However, it quickly got out of hand, and I actually assumed I was dead. My wife thought that I was dead on the beach. And after that experience, it was a big game changer for me. I had an introspective period to ask myself, what do I want to do with my life? And how do I want to live my life? And I sadly think that most people never really have that moment. They kind of go through life without a compass, never really understanding who they are. And I was victim of that as well. And I think I got saved in a way. And at that point, I realized that I wanted to do something I really cared about. So I searched and searched for a big mission. And my family was always in education, so it's natural to me. And yeah, I had left college with a ton of debt, and it took me a long time to pay off. It always bothered me. So I just kept gravitating, and I came to that mission statement where I want to make college affordable and accessible. And so for the people out there who don't realize what a big problem this is, there are estimated 35 to 40 million people before COVID that wanted to go back to school, but just weren't able to do so, weren't taking that first step. And to your point, Gary, is that we don't live in a world anymore where you keep the same job for 50 years. Things change too quickly. The technology is increasing at such a rapid pace. We always have to be constant lifetime learners. And that doesn't mean just, in our free time, that means our careers. And so really what this was to do was to help people wade into the pool and be able to take that journey and take that step to make themselves better.
Yeah. Well, I love the concept, because we were talking a little bit offline before we started, and I had a futurist on about 6 months ago, and I'll challenge you, because there's many things that have been disrupted in society. And what my last question to him was, what area do you think has not been disrupted yet, that is ripe to be disrupted. And what I mean in a large scale version side of it, that's there. You know, we know what is Uber's and Lyft done to taxis, and we can name multiple other ones. What do you think that area was, Grant?
I'm going to take a wild guess. It was higher education.
Yeah, it's amazing. Higher education.
Yeah.
And part of what he made, and he's talked about some study, and I don't have that. I'd have to go back and listen to that one to be able to get it. But he talked about his study is we've talked about before, you know, people say they're going to have different careers or different jobs. And, you know, you hear the 5 to 7. He actually referenced that it's going to be careers, that we're going to have 10 to 12 different careers in our lifetime for the students that are coming out now, not just jobs. And what he's talking about is people are going to have access to learning to be able to do that. So they're going to be able to do it. So what I'm kind of curious about, and the question I kind of set that up for was, why should really people pay less for college, or maybe decide there's a different route for college than the traditional route that they know today?
Well, I agree with that futurist, and because he's right, higher education was begging for disruption, and I think it's because what everybody knows, which is that the costs and the accessibility have just become wildly out of control. I think if you took someone on the street and you surveyed them and said, "Hey, would you like a degree in a perfect world?" They'd all say yes, but the problem is that the ROI has completely become out of balance. And so it's not worth it in a lot of people's minds to take that first step. And so when you go back to his comment, which is true, which is that we probably do need to have multiple career changes, what are people supposed to do? So I think that that's really created a perfect storm. And so, you know, I guess now, you know, the question is, you know, how do we get past that? And I think the answer is that, one, we have to be able to create smaller, bite-sized opportunities for people to upskill. So yes, a degree is a great option for people who want a career that necessitates that, an accountant, a teacher, you know, certain, et cetera. But in a lot of careers, a lot of people just need something like a certification to begin work. Hey, I've got a lot of experience, let's say in healthcare. I just need a certification in medical billing and coding to go get that job. So we want to provide both options. And I think the real disruption is happening where in a platform like ours, where you're providing it for free, you're providing all of the access for free for people to get started, to break down the barriers of wading into the pool instead of making this big jump, which is otherwise very scary.
Yeah, I think that's the key. And realizing that they can pick up additional skills. And today that's being required in business every day. I mean, we've seen that over just the last 3 to 6 months as our world has changed. There's different skill sets that's needed in the workplace. And let's be honest, we know there's more out there as individuals because there's places like these podcasts that you can learn and get new information, and other podcasts that's out there and on the web that's available. So people have that curiosity that's there already. So they have to really look at what some of those differences that's there. Now,
yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add that, you know, I think that's true. I think that COVID accelerated what was already happening. And what was already happening was that the American workforce and economy is going to get more competitive because there are macro forces that are going to affect jobs. You know, we saw globalization, and that's going to continue. The next wave is robot automation. And that is going to, I don't think people appreciate how many jobs that's going to wipe out. I'll give you one example. The trucking industry employs 2 million people in the US alone, and there are robotic convoys on the road right now, and they anticipate that within a few years, that's going to wipe those jobs out. And these are good paying jobs. It's hard work, but you know, $80,000 a year. What are those people going to do to pivot? And again, that's just one industry. So all of these things that we saw happening before COVID have now been accelerated. People realize the reality and the gravity of the situation. So yeah, I think that now this is really the time to start thinking about it for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's the key is really what do you need and what do you need to move yourself forward, and then what options are available out there. So how can this with your onlinedegree.com, how can that work to either finish college faster or, you know, really allow a person to accelerate that learning curve that we talked about, or maybe add that additional curve?
Yeah, let me explain how it works. So, because this completely changes how people approach college. So now in 60 seconds, you can get started on our website, no applications, no entrance exams, and just start taking college level courses that could apply towards your degree, lowering the cost of college, helping you get there faster. We do it for free. And so what that means is, and why that's so monumental and different, is that really before this, the way to save for college was, oh, the community college system and scholarships. But for a working adult, those really don't apply because, and that's why I think we see so many working adults not taking that first step. Because if you're a working adult, as we can all appreciate, you're busy. You've got a job, you've got family, you've got all kinds of responsibilities, and you can't take on a bunch of debt like you did in your 20s because you can't amortize that over a lifetime of career. It's got to be more affordable. So I looked at all these problems and I said, we can make a solution that solves that. And something else that's really important too is what we adults don't like to admit is that we have a lot of psychological anxiety. We don't want to go into something if we don't think we're going to be successful. We don't want to get started if we don't think we've got the time management or we'll do well. So, hey, this is also a very low stress environment. Come in, explore courses, figure out what you want to be when you grow up, and just get started. And then the beauty of our system is, as you take those courses, you can lower the cost of your degree. We also provide other discounts you can unlock at different universities or different programs. We go out there and get everything for you. And again, it's all free. It's all to help you take that first step and really solve the shortcomings of the community college system.
Okay. So how does it fit then? You say you can get started for free. So when you unlock some of those others, because you're an economics guy here. So, I always have to think, where's the money coming from? I'm the simple math type of individual. So is it when you help connect them with the other resources, then they're able?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for the students, from the students' perspective, they come on the platform and let's say they take 3 or 4 courses. Then they go and they choose one of the universities that we've got a partnership with. And that university will usually offer them a further discount for attending, like 10%, 20% off, a significant amount, so that, no scholarships, just an instant discount because they're one of our students. So, all in all, they could save 25, 30% towards their degree, finish their degree at that university, and they've done it at a much lower cost and far faster. For us, the whole platform is supported by our university partners. So when I looked at this problem, I knew it had to be free. If we want a platform that's going to really transform higher ed, it's got to be free. We got to allow people to come in and get their feet wet. So of course the problem was, how do you pay for it, right? How do you make a system? Right. Because tuitions become synonymous with higher education. I think that's one of the things that we really disrupted with, because by removing tuition, we of course had to figure out another model. But what people don't realize is that the value for the student is probably fairly obvious and intuitive. Universities get a huge benefit as well. One of the things that no one talks about is that universities are desperate to find better students. And by better, I mean students who are prepared when they arrive. They don't need a lot of orientation in terms of using an online system, how to be successful. Do you have the time management? We're like a proving ground. And so as students go through our process, they're actually becoming better students and more desirable. And so the university sponsored the whole platform.
Wow, that's awesome. I love the concept, and thinking back to what my futurist said, that's really about disruption, because you're allowing them to get in on the platform, understand what they're looking for. Because part of the challenge is, I've talked before, I have said before to people, sometimes, as adults, I'm 53, we always ask kids that are getting out of school or in school, what are you going to be when you grow up? And my philosophy behind that is we ask that question because we're still trying to figure it out too. So we still want to know what options are out there. Maybe I'm interested in that field. Maybe I want to. And it really allows them to explore some with your getting started and really understanding how does online education work. And I just love the concept, Grant, that's there. So how can you help people with, really being able to take those benefits? Now they're getting those benefits. Is there a way that they can explore of what degree? So when they're on some of the initial courses that they're able to kind of see, okay, I'm thinking I really like this marketing aspect. I've done some business stuff before. Does that allow them then some intro courses to be able to get into to really decide what some of those benefits that maybe they'll like that area of expertise that they're going into?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Gary, I think you touched on something that people rarely discuss, which is that, yeah, most people we never know what we want to be when we grow up. We just kind of fall through it in most cases. And that doesn't change when we get into our 40s and 50s and whatnot. And yeah, a part of what I wanted to do was create something where people could explore a lot of great content without the pressure, oh, I'm paying for tuition at a university. And part of that was how we've got 15 courses that are super interesting and diverse to help achieve that. So one of the things that we offer is an intro to marketing, intro to accounting, computer science, intro to robotics, history, environmental science. All of these are really interesting things where you don't need any prior experience. It's all introductory so that you can explore all of these great courses. And, one thing that I think there's a misconception with higher education is that, let's say they are interested in a field that maybe we don't have a course on, and they think, oh, well, then none of this will apply. But that's not true, because all of our courses, when they articulate a school, usually come under general education or electives. And so what people don't realize is that no matter what degree they choose, you have to finish certain general education requirements because the university wants you to have a broad education. So that accounting course, that history course, they could all count towards your degree. So it's interesting stuff and will help you get there faster if you can apply it, regardless of what that content is. So it really is a win-win to help you figure out what you want and apply those credits towards the degree.
Yeah, what a great concept, because I tell you, that's the challenge that people have. I've got 3 teenagers. I have a 21 and a 19 and an 18-year-old. So my last one is going into college his first year. She knows what she wants, but I know the other 2, they've struggled with that of what they want. And the problem we put so much pressure is, what are you going to be when you grow up? When they don't really know at that point, and it's going to change and it's going to adjust. I mean, I was fortunate. I was an entrepreneur from the get-go, got a business degree, and I went into entrepreneurship. But at the time when I was in college, I was taking the courses. I knew I wanted to go business, but I didn't know that I was going to be an entrepreneur all my life. And I think that's a real challenge. People, there's so much pressure, as you say. And then, we can go to the other side. It's not just the students anymore. It's that person that's in their 30s or 40s, and they're wanting something different to be able to explore. What would be a couple things? We've talked about a lot of them, Grant, but as we start to kind of wrap up before we go to the recharge round, what would be some of the things that you would tell people where maybe they're hearing what we're saying and they know they'd like to do that, but, get them off the thinking process and the doing, put them into the doing category?
Yeah, I would reflect back on your point about the writing your own obituary. I actually had a similar way I looked at that. I look at everything, usually in the big decisions of my life, I like to look through the lens of being on my deathbed. And that's similar to what I think he said, though I think what he did was, better and more articulate. But it's true, when you think of it from that perspective, and you think I'm at the end of my life and I'm looking back, I think it's more important, and you'll find, of what you did do than what you didn't, or I'm sorry, what you didn't do than rather what you did do. And so I think that so many people are immersed in the daily minutia of their lives, of cost and insecurities and whatnot. And there's no better time than now to do whatever you want to do. And so if that's something where you are unhappy with your current life, or you're unhappy with your current career, you want to change, you got to do it today. You got to.
Yeah. And I think that's the message we're trying to tell you, is move forward, because life is too short. There's a great video out there, and we'll put it on the show notes. I'll have Chris put it in show notes. Says everybody dies, but not everyone lives.
Yeah.
And that's so true. And what we're saying is life is too short, and it doesn't matter what age you are. I mean, I started in this new career in my late 40s of doing speaking, coaching, and training, because I love helping people, and I decided to make that change. And I've been learning every day. I've made mistakes along the way, and it's been a different entrepreneurial journey than I had before, of running retail business and other businesses that I had. But I love every minute of it. It's no job. It's fun getting up every day and doing what I do each and every day. And that becomes the real key. Grant, I truly appreciate your time and sharing your expertise here. Before we go on and I hit you with the recharge round questions, why don't you share with them how they can reach out to you, your website, and if they have questions for you that they can contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to follow the project, it's just onlinedegree.com. And we've got our degrees there. And we've also just launched our new certifications to really round everything out. So really having an option for everybody, no matter what they want to do. And I'm really active on LinkedIn. So, if you go to LinkedIn and search my name, Grant Aldrich, you'll probably find me. And yeah, I'd love to talk with the listeners and keep up with people.
I would highly suggest, I checked out your website, the onlinedegree.com, and I'd tell you, check that out. And I love the name, and I'm going to be following you because I want to see this disruption that you're making into the marketplace. And I'm excited to see that you're moving forward in that and what benefits that we see for so many different people that can really take that and move forward in their life.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Grant. Chargers, let's get into the recharge round because I love asking every guest these questions because these are kind of my framework that I speak about a lot, Grant. And I love hearing other guests how they kind of feel in these areas. We've talked some about this, but we didn't talk directly about it. But my first question is, how do you believe your mindset affects your daily living?
Yeah, well, so back to that letter, I really think that for me, any kind of mindset you have has to be custom tailored to your own shortcomings or your own perceived weaknesses. And mine was that I want to be successful. I want things to work well. I love to build. And the problem is if I leave myself to my own devices, I will go down every rabbit hole. I'll just keep working all day long, and you can't do it. You have to realize you have to focus your time on the most important things. And so that really helps me focus myself and remember that there's a cost to the time that I spend away from my family.
Yeah. And that's setting the boundaries, because if we don't, it's so easy. And as entrepreneurs, I think we can be one of the worst because we just love the work because we love what we're doing. So you have to have those boundaries.
That's right.
How about, what do you do each day to bring energy into your life?
Yeah, I do a number of sound body, sound mind type things, breathing and kind of like a little bit of meditation type of things to really keep myself focused on a daily basis. And, to your point, Gary, I think that because I went through the exercise of knowing myself, I'm just excited to go to work every day. I really love it. Because I really gave myself that chance to say, what do I want to do? Let's go do it. I'm happy every day. And that really makes all the difference, where I get to go to work, I get to help people, we get to create something really fun and cool, and I get to express my creativity. It's a win. I love it. I don't have to, no one's dragging me out of bed to go to work.
That's right. You're able to get there and go easily. How about the number one connection or relationship that's made the biggest impact on your life?
Yeah, I would say my wife. I used to, in my early 20s, I plowed ahead all alone going through that, just grit and suffering as an early entrepreneur. And that, that wears off. And eventually you realize that you need a bedrock of support and someone who's going to be there for you, who gives you that encouragement when you're down, who you can be very frank with and open with when you talk about all the insecurities and fears you have in these situations. And I'm very lucky that my wife's been there to support me through all of that. And I couldn't have done it without her.
Yeah, makes a big difference. I've got the same thing as I was telling you. My wife has supported all my different businesses that we've done. And today we still work together. And for some people that doesn't work, but for us it does. And it's been a great thing.
I love that, Gary, by the way. That's like inspiration for me too, because that's how I want to be. Like I want that to be the entire way, all the way through. And that's very cool.
Thanks. What advice has influenced you the most in your life?
Yeah, that's a very tough one. I actually get a lot of really good advice from people. I don't think there was this, I can't really say this was from one person, but one of it was, this is kind of a collection of advice, which is that, I'm sorry, I'm gonna take that back. There is one person. So there's this very famous quote from Socrates where he says, the only true wisdom is that you know nothing. And that actually has had a profound effect on me, because every time I think I know something and I don't go out and seek advice from mentors and people, it always bites me in the butt. I every time. And I've realized I need I know so little. The older I get, I got to surround myself with smarter people than myself, at least who I can bounce ideas off. I would say that's the best quote.
Now that's a good one there. I love that. I'll have to look that one up, and we'll have that in show notes for you.
Cool.
All these messages, when I say them back, it allows my son that does show notes to remember to put those in there, because I think that's a great one. What about a book that you've enjoyed, and share why you love it?
Yeah. I really liked How to Influence or How to Make Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, because I think that book was influential in just changing your mindset on how to be just as a person, right? And how to be like a fun person to be around and I think that was a good starting point. And then I read a lot of books past that, like Keith Ferrazzi's book on, how to help people, because I realized with myself that I can easily get into the mode where I sit in my screen, just grind. I don't pay attention to the outside world. So knowing myself and knowing my shortcomings, I really needed to branch out and make better relationships and just have fun and make friends. And that was really a cool book to get me started on that.
Yeah. And it's amazing how, it's been written for, I forget when the first published date was, but how practical it still is today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one I would tell you definitely pick up. My last question, you've almost made it through the recharge round here, but my last question for you is, what legacy do you want to leave the world?
Yeah. So through the lens of my deathbed, I've thought about this, and I really want my children, because I'm assuming no one else is going to pay attention, maybe not even them, but that,
especially when they're teenagers.
Right. Yeah. Especially that, that I lived every day my way, and I did it free of any encumbrance. Like I lived the life that I wanted to live. And that, I think, is a very difficult thing to achieve. Actually, it sounds easy, but it really isn't. And so be an example of being happy every day, an example of enjoying your work. I want to be that example for them.
I love that. That kind of brings me back to one of my quotes that I have. It says, I probably won't remember exactly, but I said something about, it's your life. Why not live the life you want?
Yeah.
And I think that's really the key that we're all trying to find, is what life do we want as we go through this journey and realize that life is a journey. How can we progress through that each and every day? Well, Grant, you've definitely shared some great information with us, and I've truly enjoyed our time together. Share with them again how they can check out your website and reach you.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I really appreciate you having me on. I felt honored. You've got an incredible show, a lot of honored guests. I'm like, wow, I'm not even up to par with these guys. onlinedegree.com is the website, and go ahead and just search Grant Aldrich on LinkedIn. We can connect there.
Okay. Well, Chargers, I hope you really think about, what do you need in your life today? What education, what learning do you need? Check out Grant's website. But the big key is, write it down. And then I would challenge you, if Grant kind of gave us the philosophy there, but why don't you write down that future letter to yourself, either the letter or the obituary, whatever you decide works best for you. Because for some people, when we say obituary, that gets a little ugly. Why don't you write down, just tell yourself, what do you want your life to look like? And if you can't do it from long time ago, take yourself 1 year from today. Where do you want to be 1 year from today? And maybe in there, you need to tell yourself, what do you have to learn this next year to be able to get there? And that will give you a roadmap. Now, when you do it, don't put it away in a drawer, even though that could make you achieve your goal yet, because we're talking about goals here, really, when you're writing that letter, but it doesn't have to be written as a goal, but you're putting yourself in that future self to be able to reach it. So Grant, I just thank you so much for joining us on the Charge Podcast. Some great information for our Chargers to take and really take action again. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you, Gary.
Chargers, I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. And remember, we'll be back here next week with another great guest. All you have to do is keep coming back. But the one thing that you could do to help us keep growing the community is share and like and let other people know about the Charge Podcast. Make it a great day. We'll see you back here next week. Thanks for joining us.
This podcast has ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.